What's going on, everybody? Fedor here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we have this large box over here with a Longer LK5 Pro. And the reason why it's here is because I think this is an interesting entry-level machine, one of those first, second, third type of machines, but it has a couple unique things that I thought would be interesting and fitting for our channel. This machine ranges between $300 and $330, and it's a 300 by 300 machine, which means it is bigger than your standard Ender 3 style, except it has a bunch of different changes on it that make it unique and make it a decent value, at least what I see on paper. Now, let's take a look. So just in this little preview that we have here, you can see that it has these feet. It's kind of like up off the ground and everything's tucked underneath of it, which I find really interesting and kind of nice. Then it has these braces that are on the front of the machine, and that is pretty cool because that's typically an add-on that people install on their machines that are large like this. So it's nice to see that that's there right out of the box. I also know that it has silent steppers, a glass plate, and it has a touch screen that looks pretty unique and interesting in terms of its UI, and it's still running in open source firmware. So a lot of interesting things. I would like to see how it performs. So what I'd like to do is take it out of the box, assemble it. I hear this is already mostly assembled, so that should be fast. Then we're gonna print a couple things from the SD card and then dive into Cura, and I'm gonna slice a couple things, maybe do a large print just to test its size. And then we'll see where it goes, and we'll see if this printer is worth your time and your attention and your money. Now keep in mind, this is not going to be a full review, just an unboxing, an assembly, and a first impressions video. I do like to save a review until I have the machine for an extended period of time and actually use it. I see how long it lasts, things of that nature, so just keep that in mind. Another thing worth mentioning is Z-Banks did send me this machine. They're a distributor for Longer, and I'm not supposed to say anything specific or do anything specific, which is why I chose to do this video, because it gives me the opportunity to share my honest opinion and honest experience with you all for this machine. So let's get into it. Let's get it out of the box and let's assemble it. Let's power it on. All right, see you here in a second. Right off the bat, we see it has some kind of red foam, definitely a unique color. All right, so what I'll do is I'll lay some of the components out on the table, and then we'll get this box off of here and bring the printer up on the tabletop so we can all see what's actually in here. Interesting pink little sample. We have our manual. We have a nice spatula. Little baggies over here. Let's see what we got. We have an end stop. We have our SD and SD card reader. Looks like the SD is one of the NetAC ones that are 8 gigs, at least they're branded. I've seen a lot of machines start doing unbranded ones lately. Let's see what we got in here. We have some 3D printed parts. Not sure what they are just yet. It just says spare parts, and a little PTFE tube. And that is actually one of the features. You can see that it's blue. I'm pretty sure it's not Capricorn tubing, but it does mention that it has a high temperature PTFE tubing. It looks like we have our rods that hold up the gantry system and a lead screw. All right, here is the pre-assembled top of our gantry system. These look like the 2040s that do not have the cutouts in the front, so the front is nice and clean. Here we have the glass bed, and I believe that is attached to the printer, so let's just take the glass off. Here we go, pretty typical stuff here. Big red foam. It looks to be pretty decently packaged in here. Nothing is even close to the edge. Plenty of space. We have our really typical miscellaneous screw. I don't know if I've taken out a printer out of a box as of late that didn't have some extra hardware laying around. So at least that's thematic. We got some zip ties, a bunch of more little baggies. Let's see what we got. Okay, this looks like it's the hardware for the machine. Yep, we got some M5s, some M4s, more M5s. We have our little wrench. Little toolkit held together with some zip ties, some clips which we'll be using for bed clips. We have our Z motor and coupler. This looks like one of the, this looks like the top of the Z lead screw with the bearing in it. Some of this is packaged so well I can't even get it out of here. All right, we have our power cable. Okay, and that's the machine. I'm gonna set it on the side here for a second and see what all this other stuff is. We have some kind of 3D printed clip All right, looks like this 3D printed clip has seen better days. Very nice use of this foam. There's pieces that are kind of like inside of the box, underneath some pieces of the foam, and they're very well protected. Okay, so one that's all the way down in the center is the screen. It's a nice size screen, actually. All right, and before I get the big chunk out that is mostly pre-assembled, I need to go ahead and set this box down, so let me do that. All right, so here is the main unit. Everything looks nice. I did find this super lightweight filament holder, spool holder. Let's take a look at the x-axis. The hot end unit itself is very small. As you can see, this is my hand here. It uses a 30mm fan, unlike most other machines use a 40mm fan. It does look like it has a pretty standard Creality style hot end, except it's blue. And it does use a blue Capricorn style tubing. They do claim it to be a higher temperature than normal. I do see a nice spring. Typically these yellow springs people use for the bed, and it does have those on the bed as well, which is a nice touch. But otherwise, nothing out of the ordinary here. A pretty simple tensioner. Everything else is standard, except right over here, back to the hot end, we have a really interesting type of fan. Typically this is a small pancake style blower fan that blows onto the hot end, but this is a 3D printed duct with a pretty regular 40mm fan. So they use the 30mm fan for the hot end itself and a 40mm fan for cooling. So this is definitely a unique setup, and I'm interested to see how it performs. Everything else seems to roll smooth. The extruder is plastic. It does have a filament, a runout sensor right kind of like embedded into it. Otherwise, it is a pretty standard unit. Everything else looks okay. One thing I want to do while we have everything here, before I go ahead and assemble the machine, is let's take a look at what's powering this thing. You know, typically it's usually easier to do this type of thing before we go ahead and put it all together. So let's see if there's a decent way to stand this machine up. Here we go, this will work. Okay, looks like all the components are underneath and in the back of the machine. Let me go ahead and give you a better view of this. All right, that should be a little bit better. Looks like everything is in the back and tucked away underneath. We got some little triangle punch outs down here. Could have been circles, could have been slits, but hey, look, they made little triangles over here. In the back, they kind of have like a fan style cutout, like a triangular fan style cutout in the back. So that's interesting that they spend the time and effort on that. Let me get my tools and let's take off this cover. It looks like they did make this nice and easy to get into. One thing while I'm taking this apart, I did notice that the feet are actually 2040 extrusions instead of just plastic feet, which I kind of thought that's what they were from the pictures. But that's nice. They're metal actual riser feet, and they do give this thing a nice little platform to get air from. Looks like the power supply is a Chenglang power supply, so not a Wellgood unit or anything like that. But I have seen these units on other machines and they do seem to be dependable. All right, let's see what else we need to take this off. I do see that there is a fan right over here in the front that's blowing air directly on the motherboard, and it is a 40mm fan. And it is exposed, which actually makes it really easy to upgrade if that's something that needs to be upgraded. All right, let's see. We have 8 screws that need to come off to get to the motherboard. Let's see if that's all of them. Nope, looks like there is one more, and it's on the bottom. Our bed just tried to make an escape. You ain't going nowhere, bed. One thing I didn't notice over here is there is a little bracket that's going to hold the bed wiring. That's nice. It was kind of tucked away from shipping. That's nice. A little strain relief. Let's see if we can open this now. Okay, and the fan does not have a quick plug to take off, so I'm just going to set this on top. All right, so I know there's a lot of wiring in the way here, but from what I can see, the stepper drivers are actually the kind that are removable. This is actually really nice. You can remove these, exchange them, upgrade them. if something goes wrong, you can switch them out, and that's very nice. These are adjustable, and just generally that's nice to see. I know a lot of printers are going actually the opposite way, where these are integrated, they don't have heat sinks, and some newer machines have large plugs that make it much harder to modify their machine or mess with the machine, but this looks like it makes it a little bit easier. I do notice that one of the drivers is different, and I'm assuming this is the actual extruder motor. So we'll see how loud it is. I bet this is a slightly less expensive one, but looks like it would be easy to go ahead and replace. So that's a really good thing. Let me take a closer look at what some of these empty plugs are. I know this doesn't have a auto bed leveler, for example, so maybe there's a way to add it on. It's actually kind of hard to see what the labels are to these plugs here, because all the cables are marked with what they are. Like, for example, this says X and it's a small plug, so this has to be the end stop for X. But then it says X minus, X plus, and there is another one here that says E for extruder. So I'm not sure how these are labeled, but there isn't labels on the bottom, so I can't exactly see what these two empty plugs are down here. But it does look like there is at least some room to expand in some way, shape, or form. Let's see what the chip is over here. The chip is a ATME GA2580, 2560. And I know this is an 8-bit board by looking at the specs, but the silent steppers make up for that, and it should do everything that we need it to do. All right, let me go ahead and put this back together. I'll show you everything that's out on the table right now, and then we will assemble the machine and do some testing. So let's get going. All right, here it is. It is all assembled and it does look really nice. I just wanted to talk about a couple things I saw while building this machine. One is, it is pretty bare bones. There isn't any fancy shrouds or colors or anything of that nature. It is just extrusions, you know, metal. Everything is nice and solid. It sits flat. I do like these braces. It makes it feel really sturdy once it's all together. So kind of the aesthetic of it is like a bare bones minimal machine, which is actually really nice. I do like the screen, although I haven't seen it yet. I'm kind of interested too. One thing I wanted to note about the wire and the cable management is these sheets are actually really nice. They're fabric, they're soft, they don't snag on anything, they're not in the way. That's really nice. Another cool thing I saw is that the bed slides on 6 wheels instead of 4, so it makes it really easy to get nice and snug, and it rolls really smoothly on all those wheels. The carriage is really minimal and very small, so it's really lightweight. Hopefully that will help because this has a single Z like I mentioned before. One thing to mention about the single Z is you definitely want to take some time to make sure that your X-axis here adjusted with these eccentric nuts on the inside of the wheels. You want them to be tight. You don't want any play here, because if these are not correct, when you move the Z-axis down or up, this side could potentially move less or more than this side, and it could get askew later on, which would make your first layers have some issues. So definitely take some time to use the wrench that came with it to adjust the eccentric nuts on the inside wheels. Other than that, everything came together really easily. The little piece of the extra hardware that I found in the box was actually from the coupler for the lead screw. So yeah, good thing that we found that. Everything came together really nicely. Another thing is typically this style printer on the bottom of the chassis here has one piece going across, but this has two. So it's pretty robust, especially with these braces, and the inclusion of these braces is, like I mentioned, pretty good. So everything is good so far. The power supply was switched for overseas. I'm in the United States, so I did have to move that. And that sticker was a little bit annoying, but that's really nitpicking at this point. So I'm really excited to power it on, check out this menu, and then we'll level it and print something. So let me get you a little bit closer to the screen and let's see what this user interface looks like. All right, come on. Let's go ahead and turn the printer on. All right, we got the load screen. Okay, that powered on really quickly. Nice and clean. I like the icons. They kind of remind me of an old iOS or something like that. Kind of like a phone. I'm going to use this Allen key so my big fingers don't block the screen. All right, let's start with about. Let's kind of get the details on the machine. Hopefully you guys can see that. Looks like there's already been 22 hours and 45 minutes of printing on this machine, which means they tested it. So that's nice. 300 by 300 by 400 millimeters is the size of the machine. All right, let's go ahead and check out move. Okay, looks like we can enable and disable steppers, I'm guessing. This is how, which measurement, or which increment rather, you'd want to move. So let's see if the bed moves. Yep. X moves. Let's see the Z. Z moves a little bit slower. Okay, that's nice. I'm assuming the extruder, yep, it won't work because it's not heated up. That's okay. All right, let's go back. Let's see what's in tune. We got nozzle temperature, hotbed temperature, fan speed, feed rate, and nozzle flow rate. Let's go ahead and turn up the fan. Oh wow, I don't even hear it. That's completely silent. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, let's hit stop. Okay, filament. Okay, I'm guessing this is how you heat. Nozzle. Okay, the check mark appears when it starts to heat, and then you can cool down the heat bed or the nozzle this way. There's a load and unload, and you can set the temperature of that. Okay, nice and clean. Okay, and then leveling. Okay, and it's assisted leveling, so that's really nice. So we'll heat the bed, level the printer with a piece of paper, and then that's how we're going to go ahead and test it. So let's finally go to File and see what's on here. We got the fan duct. Okay, lets you reprint that fan duct. I'm assuming that's how they let you personalize it with some color. The whistle, a vase, cube, boat. Okay, there's a benchy in here. And filament guide. I'm guessing this is what the spare part was. I couldn't exactly figure out how the filament guide worked, but the spool is in a really nice space, so I don't think you really need that. Okay, so nice. So we'll go ahead and start with probably the whistle and see where it goes. I don't see any long prints on here, so I'll get into Cura and actually print a bunch. So let's go ahead and level the machine. I'll do that off camera because it looks really basic, you know, just manual leveling with yellow springs and assisted. So I'm gonna go ahead and level it. We'll slice up some files, we'll print a few on here, and then we're gonna go ahead and talk about how it printed. All right, let's get it going. Okay, the Longer LK5 Pro. I'm a fan of the machine. It has been really nice to use. I haven't run into a single issue. The bed has stayed absolutely level. The firmware is nice and friendly. I've printed this E, for example, to specifically test how it would do with lifting or curling, and I haven't even used anything like rafts or brims. It just sticks perfectly to it when you need it, and then as soon as it's cool, the prints just glide right off as if you could just blow on them and they'll come off, which is really nice. I hope that this glass lasts a while. All of my machines that I have here, except for one, use the same style bed surface, but this one I would say is the best one that I have come across in a while. I would say the majority of them go the opposite direction, where I can barely get the prints off in most cases, but this one, just the fact that it holds before the print and comes right off after the print, the bed is definitely great. You know, the machine is bare bones, but with that, you know, makes it really simple and easy to upgrade if that's something that you're into. And speaking of upgrades, the only thing I would recommend for this machine at all, at least so far, is to have a silent stepper on your extruder. I would say that the machine is definitely on the quieter end in comparison to some of the other machines that I have. However, you can still hear that extruder, especially on prints that have a lot of back and forth filament movement or retraction. You can definitely hear the machine working. It almost sounds like a beep occasionally when there is a fast movement. So definitely would suggest dropping in a new driver into there. And that actually you know, leads into the next section here. If you do something like that, you might want to recalibrate your E-steps, and there is no way to do that on the screen. The only way you would be able to do advanced things like PID tuning or E-steps calibration would definitely be to connect the motherboard via the cable that you can plug right into the side here, a USB cable, plug that into your computer, and use something like Pronterface to send the proper you know, G-code and read the G-code back so that you can make that adjustment. Not a big deal, but would definitely really take this machine to the next level. If that was just right here where you can do it really quickly and easily, that would be huge, especially simple things like PID tuning. So yeah, I would love to see an advanced button somewhere here so that you can just, you know, calibrate your machine. But for now, everything I've thrown at it, it has printed perfectly, as you can see. One thing I really like here is when you click on the filament section here, you can just click PLA or ABS to get your machine heated to that particular material. And typically, while I get a different roll of filament, it is already nice and hot, and you can just use the unload and load feature right there on the same screen without digging around for it to take filament out and put filament in. Makes it nice and easy. So yeah, definitely like the way that this works. I just wish there was just a little bit more to the firmware, and I do think that is a really easy fix for Longer to implement, and I hope they do. I haven't checked much on how the community has reacted to this machine, although on Thingiverse, for example, if you type in the LK5 Pro, you'll already see a ton of files and modifications for it, from direct drives to ducts to things that use different fans. So yeah, there's already a lot in that sense, but I haven't checked what the firmware for the third-party firmware is like, but I'm gonna assume that the screen might be the limitation for that one. But yeah, I think that Longer could implement something with some more advanced features and really, you know, take this to the next level. I actually, you know, think that this machine is easy and friendly enough to use and assemble to earn a recommendation as a first machine. You know, it is large and tall, and it does take up a bunch of space, so you might want to be ready, you know, for something like that, for that kind of commitment as a first machine. But as a second or third, something where it's, you know, still easy on the wallet, but can definitely print something large like this, you know, this might be the one. So far, so good in my testing. Another thing to note is the single Z didn't play a role. I could barely see any layer lines. For example, this whistle that my daughter will definitely torment me with for a while. I mean, this looks almost injected molded. You can't even see layer lines on this, and the letter and things like that. So yeah, definitely didn't play a role. The important part there is there's a bearing at the top that's not fully stationary. It has some play in it, which lets the Z-rod kind of move wherever it might need to. And the little coupler that you know, that has the threads that moves the actual Z-axis up and down when the rod spins, that needs to be slightly loosened. You don't want those two screws tightened, because then they will try to move with your bent Z-rod, because none of these Z-rods, or lead screws rather, are perfectly straight. So as long as that's loose and you have these wheels adjusted correctly with those eccentric nuts, I mean, you know, as you can see here, really easy to get set up and going. The stepper motors themselves are actually quite nice. They are labeled with a SY and they say Shenyang motor, so at least they're branded. I'm not familiar with that specific brand, but they did stay nice and cool, and they do look nice because they're nice and black and they're not just like the basic metal, you know, no brand, no stamps or anything like that. So yeah, everything seems to be pretty good. I'm so far really enjoying using this machine. Like I mentioned before, I like the way that the cables are wrapped and the cables are managed. They're not in the way. Everything just seems to work really well. So I'm going to continue to test the machine. I'm really interested to see how it lasts. You know, some of these type of things seem to deteriorate after time. You know, the belts get a little loose, the PTFE tube starts to slip, or the coupler starts to slip, things along those lines, and you start to run into like basic issues that this type of machine does. But so far, 5 days of non-stop printing, it's really nice, and I want to continue to use it for prints that I need to get done. So I'm definitely going to end up putting it and exchanging it with one of the other older machines that I have on my rack. So that should speak for itself there. So just keep in mind that I can't make a full review of the machine. This is just based on, you know, my initial impressions and in the few days of just printing and using the machine. So far so good. Excited to see what's in store for this machine. Yeah, you know, thanks to Z-Banks for sending me the machine, and these are my absolute and honest opinions on it. Okay, definitely be sure to check out the Discord channel down below if you guys need to troubleshoot your machines, or you guys want to just share your prints with people and talk with like-minded people. That's there for you in the description, as well as Patreon. Thank you to all my Patreon members. You guys help the channel out a ton, and you get to see videos like this ahead of time and ask questions and things along those lines. So definitely check out the links below. All right, as always, I'll see you guys in the comments. Later.